Welcome, my friends, to our Season 1 wrap-up show. As promised, we're going to revisit some of the subjects covered in the first 15 episodes, especially those with new developments, and also sprinkle in feedback from you, the listeners, that we receive through podcastpediatricians.com. Podcastpediatricians.com is our website, and we'd love it if you'd register with us. We will periodically send all those who register some bonus exclusive Podcast Pediatrician content. There is also the opportunity to leave suggestions, comments, and those pearls and faux pas that we do use. The bibliographies are listed for every paper and article we mention, and that's on the site too.
And you can also like us on Facebook, except for Matt, who really does not understand Facebook at all. It doesn't understand how it works. It's like a magic thing to him.
Is it just a bunch of faces?
just doesn't understand it. We are also on YouTube. At least the first 2 episodes I put on YouTube last night. So by the time you hear this, hopefully episodes will be up on YouTube. And we really are enjoying this, and we get a lot of great feedback. But if every person listening to this podcast can just get one other person to download some episodes, you would make both of us very happy. Tell me, Matt, what's been going on?
So let me see here. I just came back from hiking some with my cousins up at the Delaware Water Gap over a long weekend. That was a lot of fun. I mean, especially to think that New Jersey has that much beauty, that much in terms of foliage and cool lakes and that type of thing. And that followed me going to one of my other cousins' wedding, who got married on Saturday up in Philly. Shout out to Pete and Allie. Had a great time with my cousins, and it was all good. And as if that wasn't good enough, my Philadelphia Eagles are tearing it up. Can't wait to take my son to the Dallas game at the end of the year so we can revel in the defeat of the lame, overrated, much hated in Philly Cowboys. We hate them.
Although we'll take care of patients who are Cowboy fans.
Yeah.
And we'll try to change them. We take care. I just want to, first of all, say that obviously a lot of this broadcast, we do embellish things. So he was kidding about the Jersey beautiful foliage. There's no such thing.
It was gorgeous.
No.
Google Delaware Water Gap.
You probably went over the Pennsylvania border somehow.
It was fantastic.
And since we talked, I did my annual U.S. Open tennis trek and Comedy Cellar trek on McDougal Street. I got to say, usually I'm sat in the back when I go there, and this time they put me on the stage in front. I always thought, old people go in the back, but they put me in the front. And Rachel Feinstein, Stephen Wolf, and then Michael Che. You know Michael Che?
Who are these people?
Saturday Night Live. Oh, he was good. And then to surprise someone we both know, someone older than both of us, Ray Romano.
Yo.
And then saw the up-and-coming musician Toulouse, or Tolu to his buddies at the Rockwood Music Hall. He can sing, he can dance, but he's great. He did the I Will Follow You Apple commercials, and that was fun. Although it kind of went back to our last Hot Topics. We were in this music hall, and it was so loud. Couldn't hear myself think. And I had to go out halfway and just get in the air, and the bouncers were laughing at me. I was like, it's too loud for me. I need to get out of there. I should have worn some of those headphones that we talked about. And then I saw James Taylor at a benefit concert in Chicago. His voice is just the same as it was in the 70s.
Wow.
As we say in New York, it's like butter. You don't get that. Yeah, you never get that. No. All right, so before we do our wrap-up, Matt and I had talked about the one ingredient that's missing from this podcast that I think every show in the 21st century needs to succeed. Of course, I'm talking about some Kardashians.
Oh. So last winter, Kim Kardashian's blog reported that she ate her placenta.
Now, that's called placentophagia.
After giving birth to her second child, Saint West. So she freeze-dried the placenta and ate it in pill form. Now, her sister, Kourtney Kardashian, did not eat her own placenta, but she did eat some generic placenta pills. They say it prevents depression and increases energy.
And maybe, Matt, they sell it at Trader Joe's or maybe on Gwyneth's Goop website. I'm not sure.
Gosh.
So following this announcement, the CDC in June warned against consumption of dried placenta capsules. In fact, in one report, a baby got late-onset Group B strep sepsis from her mom's placenta capsules. Matt, do you recommend these placenta capsules?
I mean, do the Kardashians eat other people's fingernails? Do they eat stray tonsils or appendices, that they come across.
I don't watch the show. They might.
This smacks of cannibalism to me. and that's all I have to say about that.
But, it did remind me, when I was reading this, of my favorite SNL skit from Franken and Davis. And I don't know if you remember this. A pregnant Gilda Radner and her presumed husband, John Belushi, are in the supermarket walking around, and they run into Lorraine Newman, who asks them if they're going to eat the placenta since it's a great source of nutrition. Oh, and then Gilda, and I love Gilda Radner, replies, she's not sure there's enough placenta to feed John and all the kids. And then Lorraine says there will be if you use, and she pulls a box off the shelf, Placenta Helper. Oh, okay. And with Placenta Helper, you can turn Gilda's placenta into a tasty casserole for the whole family. This joke was funnier in the 70s when everybody ate Hamburger Helper. Now, no, so in South Jersey, were they eating Hamburger Helper?
No.
You never had Hamburger Helper?
We had like Groundhog Helper.
Okay. Also, this is true about maybe 15 or so years ago, Dr. Joe from my practice, as you know.
Good guy.
We had a new mom meet and greet, and the mom asked if he supported a lotus birth, which is a real practice from Australia where you don't cut off the umbilical cord at all. You just wrap it with the placenta still attached to the newborn and carry around the placenta with your baby until it naturally separates 3 to 10 days later. Now, Joe ended up saying that he was worried about infection risk and he didn't think that we were the right practice for her, and she probably sent the mom to you. Did you remember that? Did you take care of this mom?
If I did, I've blocked it out of my senses.
At the time, I looked this up, and there was testimonials from parents of how wonderful the Lotus method is. Although one mom mentioned that by day 3, there was a bit of a fishy smell. And another mom casually shared that her cat tried to eat it. I looked this up now. You can actually buy Lotus birth kits on Etsy, including decorative cloth placenta bags and incense to mask the smell of the dead blood-filled organ you're carrying around. So again, Matt, is this something that your practice recommends?
We like flowers of almost any ilk in my practice, but not as they relate to placentas overstaying their welcome. And that really does seem like what this is. But that's not to say that delayed cord clamping isn't a good idea. How'd you like that segue? Because by doing this, babies do actually get more iron stores. So in fact, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists now recommends a delay in umbilical cord clamping for all healthy infants for at least 30 to 60 seconds after birth, given the numerous benefits to most newborns. Have you heard about this, Rob?
Makes a lot of sense. It's easy to do, and it should be routine.
Yeah, and it's a revision over the last couple of years. In fact, in preterm babies, delayed umbilical cord clamping is associated with a variety of benefits, according to the researchers, and that includes improved transitional circulation, better establishment of red blood cell volume, and even a decreased need for blood transfusion. So pretty impressive stuff.
There you go. We're both for that.
For term infants, as one can imagine, increases their hemoglobin levels at birth and improves iron stores for at least several months. And that helps prevent iron deficiency during the first year of life. And that is real important since iron deficiency has been very clearly related to impaired cognition, impaired motor and behavioral development, etc.
As we get into our season 1 recap, got to say that we really have loved all your comments and all your inputs. As you know, and with Matt's full endorsement, we quickly got rid of the beeper sound, and everyone weighed in on that, especially Dr. Rich and Dr. Laura, who said it triggered their PTSD from residency. Here's one more listen.
Yikes. All right. We have been approached by some of our listeners, and they have let us know that in some way, shape, or form, we seem to remind them of the Car Talk guys.
Click and clack,
which humbles us to the lack of speech.
We love them.
This is exactly kind of the tone we were trying to strike when we decided to start this. We wanted it to be informational but casual, and we wanted to kind of at minimum amuse ourselves and open that self amusement up to the rest of the world if anybody else cared to listen. So thank you very much, Dr. Rich.
Yes, and randomly, Dr. Larry from Madison, remember Jenna Elfman's dad, pointed out to Matt that the uncola nut was 7-Up, not Sprite, and that it was the piss boy with his piss bucket from Monty Python's History of the World.
Whoa. I'm going to call you out right
Not a drool
there.
bucket.
Yeah. It wasn't Monty Python's History of the World. It was Mel Brooks's History of the World.
There you
go. So
there you go. But I do think
clearly you didn't get this information from Dr. Larry.
No, that's my fault. I do think that when Matt said that about the drool cup, he was thinking about the SNL skit of Miles Copperthwaite that included Michael Palin from Monty Python, who had the drool cup.
Could be.
Of course, this same Dr. Larry also mentioned that he loves his EMR, so I question
He is my
him.
kind of guy.
I know, you love it. So that will be an episode this year.
We're sharing our own personal opinions on pediatric care. Always talk to your own pediatric caregiver about your child. Pediatric caregivers should always consult expert guidelines and consider their own community standards of care. So our first 3 episodes of this podcast were on sleep. Since that time, we've noticed that more Delaware schools are moving to later start times for middle schools and for high schools. But, as that Hoosier Dr. Carroll wrote a few weeks ago in the New York Times, 82% of middle and high school students still start earlier than 8:30 a.m. In the 1950s and in the 1960s, most middle and high schools started either at 8:30 or at 9. So we have gone backwards on this a bit. Dr. Carroll also noted that delaying school by 25 to 70 minutes translates into 25 to 70 minutes more of sleep, and that when school starts later, teens do not just go to sleep later, they actually do sleep more. So Dr. Carroll's bottom line is later start time would add $83 billion to our economy in a decade and cause fewer car crashes and fewer dead teenagers and result in greater student lifetime learning.
And just this summer, a study in sleep health showed that these early school start times increased anxiety and depression in teens. We definitely will be talking about teen anxiety and the teen anxiety epidemic this coming season. We also got a recommendation from Dr. David to watch Greg Heller in his video lectures on sleep, part of the Great Course series. And you know where Dr. Geller is from, Matt? Stanford University. You thought I'd say Northwestern. Go Cardinal.
Go Cardinals. We railed against the new AAP guidelines from 2016 that recommended that infants share a room with parents for at least 6 months and preferably for 12 months. 3 months after our episode came out in March, a new prospective study published in Pediatrics in June of 2017 showed that infants solo sleeping in their own rooms sleep significantly longer overnight and have more periods of uninterrupted sleep.
Like we said.
It reported that room sharing was associated with more transitions to bed sharing. You're in the room, you might as well come in the bed with me.
Exactly.
Better known as co-sleeping, which is discouraged by the Academy of Pediatrics. Room sharing also leads to more use of pillows and blankets in the crib.
And that leads to more SIDS.
Indeed. And this was a small study, although not infinitesimal. I mean, it was 279 patients, but the conclusions really weren't a big surprise to any of us.
Not at all. And then there was another study from Pediatrics in August of 2017 on over 3,000 moms, which was really alarming. Only 44% of moms said they always put their infants to sleep on their back. And the rate of supine sleeping is actually declining, especially in African American populations, which have the highest rate of SIDS. This is not good. We're not making any further progress in supine sleeping, and that's what we should concentrate on instead of encouraging room sharing. And this past week, the FDA also warned against using any type of sleep positioner at all, since it also may increase SIDS risk. Now, in those early episodes, and as an aside, we also talked a little bit about juice, and Matt was very strongly saying that no juice. And a few months afterwards, the AAP came out with their policy of no juice for you ever for infants. So kudos to Matt. They said that 1 to 3-year-olds can get up to 4 ounces a day and 4 to 6-year-olds up to 6 ounces, but no more than 8 ounces after that. And always in a cup, never in a bottle, and never in bed. And also always fruit juice. 100%, not fruit drinks, which have added sugar, so no Capri Suns. If it says fruit drink or fruit beverage or fruit cocktail on the label, don't buy it. I've started to add in my little spiel about have an orange, not orange juice, have an apple, not apple juice.
All right, so I'm going to put the screws to you. So
Yeah.
what do you think of this new recommendation?
So I know you're going to think. You're going to think you should just say no juice ever.
Dang straight. I mean, it's like, okay, so for 4 to 6 year olds, 1 cigarette a day is fine. For kids who are 6 to 8 year olds, 2 cigarettes a day are fine. I mean, this is junk. It's crap. It's liquid candy. Why would I? Never mind.
Yep, you've got a good point. But here's another one. Let's throw this to you. That they didn't mention this. What do you know about the green juices?
Yeah, well, I know they're really popular.
Really popular. It's the yuppie thing. Everybody in Brooklyn.
It is, and I can't speak with much intelligence. Well, I can't speak with much intelligence than anything, but the little intelligence that I have, I cannot tell you that I've studied this, but I will tell you that I am a firm believer in the fact that the closer something is to its original state when it's ingested, as long as it's cooked, or if it needs to be, is the better way to go. And this gets into the whole argument about, is garlic better than garlic pills? So again, I think natural state is generally best, and when you distort something into a different consumable form, I think that perhaps you lose some of its nutritional value.
Yeah, I did look this up, and it's usually broccoli, celery, kale, cucumber, apple, spinach, and they make a point of saying never added sugar. So certainly compared to
I could get behind that
100% fruit juice, or as Matt likes to think of it, cigarettes, it's better.
Yes.
Okay, we also had a section on Delaware news, and I've been waiting to mention this. I watched Last Week Tonight with John Oliver. I don't think you do. But in June, he had an episode about the Republican health care bill. It's hard to keep track of all those bills that went down.
Yeah.
But he made the point that the latest one did not enjoy a plurality of support in any state in the entire country, 0 out of 50 states. He went on to say that getting all 50 states to agree on anything like that is almost impossible. He then noted that only 49 states will freely admit that Delaware sucks. And the lone holdout was Minnesota, who are just too nice to admit the obvious. I mean, ouch.
Oh, man,
Jon Stewart always bashed Delaware, but I expected more from Mr. Oliver. Delaware strong.
Defend the realm.
All right, on to episode 4, the Mylan and Big Pharma rant. Now, this was my first and definitely last solo episode. It was really boring even to edit it, but hopefully the evil that is Mylan did shine through. And as you recall, Mylan's EpiPens are actually manufactured by Meridian Technology, which is part of Pfizer. And shortly after we dropped our rant, weeks later, multiple lots of EpiPen had to be recalled for manufacturing problems. And just this month, the FDA accused Pfizer and Mylan of not investigating these EpiPen failures fast enough, including reports where patients got severely ill or died after the EpiPen device failed.
With some sense of satisfaction, I can say that since our Mylan episode, their stock prices are down over 26% and over 57% since April of 2015.
Maybe because of us?
I don't know.
Probably not.
Probably not.
We'll take some credit.
Their market share has dropped from 95% to the mid-60s. So their billion-dollar drug, which they didn't invent and they didn't manufacture, is now worth only half of what they thought it was. AviQ now has over 12% of the market and is growing, utilizing direct mailings, bypassing local pharmacies, and for now is completely free for commercial insurance or if you make under $100,000.
And I'm prescribing it, although it's still wildly overpriced in pharmacies. But it's a cool design, and they certainly seem to be a more ethical company than Mylan.
I still have qualms about this. Like, let's give it away for free. I mean,
it's not free. On the back end, the insurance companies are just having to pay.
But that's what the consumer sees.
Right.
They're giving it to me for free, which that's one of those. Even though free is good, is one of the God-hold rules at my house. It always gives me pause. What's the other side of free here? Is free really free? Not usually.
Exactly. Now, the one I really like to use, and I use the most, is Adrenaclick, the generic EpiPen auto-injector, which is $109 at CVS and like $189 or $199 at Kmart, and now has almost a third of the market. And again, I prescribe it the most now. How about you?
Yeah, I've just started to come around to it by just simply, I was having a hard time figuring out how to do it with our EHR, but I'm now writing just generic,
Right. And here on a positive Mylan note, the state of Delaware, our state, just got $900,000 out of the $465 million settlement they were forced to pay out for cheating Medicaid over multiple years. So meanwhile, Big Pharma continues to suck on Avenue Q.
They do indeed. So for this next nugget, we're going to thank our friend Dr. Darren. The old, cheap, and reliable Vermox or mebendazole, which was, just to remind you provider listeners out there, 100 milligram chewables that we use to treat pinworms. And pinworms mostly affect school children. So this product was bought out and it was taken off the market a few years ago, much to our chagrin. However, it's now been relaunched as Emverm. That's EMVERM. By Amidra Pharmaceuticals and Impact Labs. The related alternative is something called Albenza, which coincidentally was also bought by Almidra and Impacts. I know the trend here, right?
That happened.
Now Emverm and Albenza are pretty much the same drug as Vermox, and they cost $190 to $400 per pill.
That's per pill.
Per pill.
And you notice like every pediatric journal and throwaway you pick up now has huge ads for Emverm.
Ridiculous. Now, granted, to treat pinworm, generally one needs a maximum of 2 pills. But a maximum of 2 pills in this situation, let's do some quick math here, is anywhere between $380 and $800 to treat pinworms.
As opposed to under $20 before. So we recommend that you never, ever use Emverm or Albenza. Try Reese's Pinworm Medicine for $12. It's pyrantyl pamoate. It works just as well. It was introduced in 1986, the last year the Mets won the World Series. And Reese's Pinworm Medicine is recognized by the FDA as equivalent to Impact's more expensive pills. So we have nothing to do with Reese's Pinworm pills.
Nothing.
But we do want to add that these pills are not made by Merrill Reese, the radio announcer for the Eagles. The biggest homer I've ever heard. We got to sing.
Fly, Eagles, fly, on the road to victory. Fly, Eagles, fly.
You don't know
Scoring
the tune,
touchdowns. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Hit 'em
Ho, hit 'em high, and watch our Eagles fly. Fly, Eagles, fly, on the road to victory. EAGLES, Eagles!
Also from Dr. Darren, and I point this out to the parents in my practice, that infant Tylenol, which is exactly the same formulation as children's Tylenol, and that's 160 milligrams per teaspoon or per 5 mLs, is by volume 4 times more expensive than the children's Tylenol. Shocker. So when I say to when parents ask me about Tylenol dosing for their infants, I of course will point them in the direction of the children's Tylenol and say, do not waste your money on the infant's Tylenol. They're coming to get your money. Keep it in your pocket.
Yep.
And children's Rhinocort is double the price of regular Rhinocort, but it's the exact same stuff. As Dr. Greg commented on our website, always use generic nasal steroids.
Generic nasal
Generic
sprays.
in this situation for sure.
And in other exasperating big pharma news, which also brings in big insurance, it has become commonplace, especially for ADHD meds, for insurance companies to collude with big pharma and require that we only use brand name drugs instead of generics, even when the generics are working well. And this apparently started with Adderall XR, but I first noticed it this spring with generic Concerta. Mom in my practice was forced to use brand name Concerta and pay $120 out of pocket a month. Instead of the $15 copay, she paid for the generic, which I prescribed, which worked great. It's ridiculous. It's scandalous.
So it begs the question, if the insurers are making their consumers pay for brand names at $120 a pop, and the generics are available, why doesn't one just simply pay for the generic out of pocket? Well, because the generics in many cases are also pretty darn expensive. I mean, a course of generic Concerta, last time I checked, was a bit over $200 for a month.
Right, if you're going outside of your insurance and you're paying for your insurance.
Absolutely. And so this is just, it's such a rigged game that it just makes one wonder where the justice here is. Speaking of that, the insurance benefit managers make these side deals with Big Pharma, which allows Big Pharma to sell their pricier brand name drugs, and I think gives some type of kickbacks to the big insurances while they screw over families. Ridiculous. Meanwhile, since insurance companies also track our use of generics, I wonder if they're dinging us for using the brand name that they're requiring us to use.
And also, apparently, it's not affecting us right now, I think, but they're also starting to do this for biosimilars like Remicade to ensure that the cheaper generics are not used. Just infuriating.
There's another really weird, ugly Big Pharma story. On September 8th, it was reported that the drug maker Allergan, which is in a patent battle over a drug to treat dry eyes, sold this drug's patents to the St. Regis Mohawk tribe in upstate New York. The tribe will claim sovereign immunity in any patent suits and get a $15 million kickback yearly from Allergan. It just goes on and on.
I wonder who thought.
Is there
that
any
one.
good news about Big Pharma out there?
Here's a really good news. This made me smile. We don't want to be all negative. Martin Shkreli, the Lord Voldemort of Big Pharma, was convicted for securities fraud and conspiracy in August and then released on bail. He tried to sell his $2 million Wu-Tang Clan one-of-a-kind record on eBay, but was unsuccessful, and then Ghostface Killah of Wu-Tang called him a man in a 12-year-old body, which is harsh, but if you look at a picture of Martin Shkreli, it looks true. And recently, Shkreli posted on Facebook that he would pay $5,000 per hair obtained from Hillary Clinton on her book tour, preferably with the hair follicle attached. Now, when a federal judge on his case heard about this, he deemed Shkreli a danger to society, and he threw him in jail. So
get back to the pokey, you.
Definitely the best thing that came out of Hillary's book tour.
Wow.
And we'll be right back. We're back. As mentioned, we will be covering the anxiety epidemic this season, but we wanted to recommend to our listeners to read the cover story of the New York Times Magazine of October 15, 2017, Why Are More American Teenagers Than Ever Suffering from Severe Anxiety? Anxiety in entering college freshmen has jumped from 18% in the mid-'80s to over 40% today, much higher than depression, although they often coexist. And social media seems to be driving much of it. So we can't talk enough about the role of smartphones, not cell phones that only text and call, but smartphones. We have mentioned that we think smartphones really fuel stress and anxiety since teens just never get a break at home anymore. They're always connected and plugged in. But it's also stressing teachers too. We have many parents in our practice who are teachers and principals who say that the smartphones is becoming a huge problem in all of their schools and making their job much tougher. There's one mom in Austin, Texas, who started a national movement to get all parents in each grade to pledge not to let their kids get a smartphone until 8th grade. The website is called waituntil8th.org. The thinking here is that you almost need to get every parent to commit in a grade for it to work. Bill Gates didn't let his kids get a smartphone until they were 14 years old. And in one study in 2016, it showed that the average age for the first smartphone is now 10.3 years, down from 12 years old, which was way too young to begin with, in 2012. So no wonder there's more and more evidence of digital addiction for youth. And in the office every day now, I'm asking proactively about thoughts about smartphone and when they might want to use it, starting at the 8, 9, or 10-year visit. What are you doing, Matt?
Well, when I think about this, I think that just like with some other things as it pertains to at what age you let a child do certain things, that there's got to be a span here. And I would think somewhere in the 12 to 14-year-old range is reasonable. I mean, I think about it in a similar sense from the standpoint of responsibility is at what age would I suggest it's safe to let a child be at home after school, alone, without firearms, or anything along that lines.
Right.
So at what point do you trust someone? I think it's just like a lot of things in childhood. It really depends on the child, but somewhere in that 12 to 14 year, I think age range is reasonable.
I go more towards seventh or 8th grade. It's been a little fun for me, though, with this in the last few months and these well visits. When they do have a smartphone, I always ask them to hand it over to me. And it's just so much fun to see how uncomfortable they are actually putting it in my hand and letting go of their precious cell phone. And then I look at the screen really briefly and then say, wow, who's Haley? Or, whoa, do you know Jason? And it's and then often the teen gets this like little panic look, and then mom and I both laugh.
This goes to your sadistic relationship with your patients.
These little moments kind of get me through my day. Especially, it's fun when they actually do have friends named Jason or Haley on Instagram, and they're their eyes lit up like, "Oh my God, what did you just say?" So, as we said before, most suburban teens have Instagram, they have Snapchat, they don't have Facebook because that's for old people, and Twitter is about 50-50 in the teens that I see. I go over that and obviously go over about posting and being careful and don't post anything you wouldn't want your mom and your grandmom and every kid at school to read. But I also have the take-home message that smartphone should never physically be in their room overnight. That before they go to bed, they need to put it in the kitchen or in the parents' room to get charged, as well as every other electronic device. And when they say right away, but it's my alarm clock, you just say, well, then go to Five Below and get an alarm clock for $5 that you don't need the multi-$100 device to have an alarm clock.
Yeah, the other thing that I think parents need to be especially careful about are the different video apps that are available.
Absolutely.
This was detailed in a New York Times article in September by Haley Krischer. So there are video apps where videos can be shared with friends, and these apps have names like Marco Polo. And House Party and Fire Chat. And while an app like Marco Polo has a closed messaging platform, friends can invite other friends, and that means that your child could talk to strangers through the app's messaging system. Also, these videos are easily deleted, so if someone is bullied or being sexually harassed through these videos, the perpetrator can easily delete the video and destroy all the proof.
Another scary app is Yellow, which bills itself as Tinder for teens. How bad does that sound?
That's creepy.
Reportedly, it has many shirtless photos of teens looking to make new friends. You could swipe right if you want to be friends, or left if you don't want to be friends. Now, they have a 13-year-old minimum, but there's no way to verify how old the kids are using it. And teens can also make false profiles and use other kids' real names to create real havoc and heartache.
And then there are a group of apps that are called anonymous apps, and this is really where kind of the phone gets left off the hook here from the standpoint of lack of responsibility. So these are apps like After School, Say At Me, Monkey, Ask FM, and these let kids share intimate feelings about themselves anonymously. But the other thing that these apps will permit is they can be used to spread rumors and to really attack people verbally. So all of this without any trace of who's posting it. So once again, there's no responsibility for one's actions. This may be a response to a famous Facebook incident, though, a few years ago, where 10 incoming freshmen to Harvard had their acceptances withdrawn because of obscene posts that they had put on Facebook. Perhaps yet another reason that teens don't use Facebook.
Also because their mothers use Facebook. That's probably the biggest reason.
Mm-hmm.
And lastly, be aware that imposter accounts can be made in the name of very young children. It also seems clear that many parents are unaware that their children and teens could have secret accounts on platforms such as Instagram, despite parental control. Yes, there's apps that can limit and monitor your child's online activity, but bottom line, your teens are better than you are on these, and they continue to get better. So you can use these apps, but nothing beats building trust with your teen and being involved with your teen.
Absolutely. And we'll be right back.
Absolutely.
And we're back. On to episode 5, Movies and Milk.
Now, safe to say that Spider-Man and Wonder Woman were clearly the best movies of the summer. And Get Out and The Big Sick were also really good. Did see Dunkirk and Planet of the Apes, did not like those very much. Battle of the Sexes, Emma Stone, Steve Carell, Alan Cumming, really good. Though you're not a tennis fan, man.
No, and I heard that movie stunk.
Okay. Fair deal. And you saw The Big Sick, right?
I did see The Big Sick. I thought it was really It was good. I didn't think it was fantastic.
I just saw a movie called The Florida Project. Really amazing and sad and eye-opening about the poverty and living desperately day to day in Orlando in the shadow of Disney World, the happiest place on earth.
Says you, buddy.
Yes. Any movies you want to recommend?
I just finished Les Miserables, and so I had never seen the movie, the Hugh Jackman. And,
right.
And
you always had a Hugh Jackman man crush.
That was supposed to be between us.
Sorry.
But so the Hugh Jackman movie, and I really look forward to it. So I now it's been out for long enough that I scrounged it up on Amazon for $1.97 for the Blu-ray DVD. So
join us next week when Matt reviews all the movies from 2013. All right, back to Spider-Man. Do you know the Spider Pig song?
I don't think so. No.
The
Where's
Simpsons?
that from?
The Simpsons?
Oh,
okay,
maybe.
Ready?
Go ahead.
Spider Pig, Spider Pig, does whatever a Spider Pig does. That's the whole song. Okay.
I forget the context, but I always forget the context of the Simpsons things.
There's no context. He's taking a pig and putting it on the ceiling. All right. Cow's milk and plant-based milk substitute beverages. Now, this got a lot of play with my families. I ended up talking about this a lot in the office. And after we did our episode, there was a study published in June of 2017 in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition that reported that each daily cup of non-cow's milk, like rice or almond or soy, consumed by young children was associated with a 0.4 centimeter lower height per cup on average for each child age. So 3 cups of this imitation milk beverage a day for 3-year-olds meant he or she would be about 1.2 centimeters shorter after a year or so. Now, it's unclear if this correlates to the ultimate height as an adult.
Yeah, so I think that this is interesting. I think it needs to be looked in much further, especially because we oftentimes will plug milk as a tremendous source of calcium, which increasingly I think our society seems to be deficient in sources of. I think there are a lot of other variables here. I mean, who's to say that the children who drank these vegetable milks or alternative milks weren't also pursuing different types of diets as part of their culture or part of their home life? So, interesting, and I think we need to continue to keep our eye on this.
Right, and again, if you're allergic to cow's milk, I don't think either one of us would ever say that you shouldn't try one of these substitute, they're not milk, but substitute beverages because it's a great source of calcium and vitamin D. But as this article pointed out, it does highlight the fact that we should regulate the imitation beverage milk-like products the same way that we regulate cow's milk.
What have you been telling people in your practice?
I've been telling them when it comes up that I think, on the whole, cow's milk is healthier and the nutrition is more bioavailable. The other big thing I talk about from that episode is that probably 2% or whole milk is better than skim or 1%. And certainly, if you're thinking of using low fat to not gain weight, probably it's the opposite. You should be using 2% or whole.
I'm usually pretty happy with the fact that somebody's trying to get milk in general, and not soda and juice. So although I'll kind of tweak my comments on it, just the fact that they're consuming some type of a product that's providing them with more calcium, I think it definitely has some advantage.
Okay, then came our 3-episode Poopalooza arc, and in retrospect, it was probably way too much poop. So Matt, did you know that Larry David stole material from these episodes for his new season of Curb?
Is that true?
Yes, episode 1 had a total riff on constipation and how common it is, just like we said. And then they had a bit about how fist bumps are still cool.
Maybe for you and Larry David.
But it was just there. So, we don't mind if Mr. David borrows from our show. It's kind of flattering. But a thank you note, a babka, a cronut, something in appreciation would be nice. And then, Matt, finally, you teased them all season, but tell us about the Pink Lady. You've got the recipe.
Oh, yes. So the Pink Lady, which is, just to remind our listeners, kind of a magical concoction that hospitals and some, I suppose, outpatient GI folks use to essentially clean someone out. From what I understood from our local children's hospital's pharmacist, this consists of 2 magnesium citrate enemas with mineral oil and Dulcolax, about 10 milligrams orally.
That's it?
That's the magic
that
right
big
there, from what I
about
understand.
The
and I presume that they're suggesting giving the Dulcolax first by maybe 15 or 20 minutes prior to the mag citrate enemas, which don't sound like a lot of fun, but I guess they do their job.
Right. Do you serve Pink Ladies at your house with an Eagles game? All right. So, and in terms of constipation, I still think I'm doing more rectal exams on kids than Matt is, and trying to use my history more so I can avoid getting abdominal x-rays, since that's been also another push is to stop doing abdominal x-rays willy-nilly to diagnose constipation. You can do it by history, and as appropriate, an occasional gentle rectal exam.
Yeah, I will still order them at times if I have a child who is having ongoing abdominal pain and no obvious source, and the history is a little bit hazy in terms of constipation.
And just a single X-ray AP
just
to
a
reduce,
single, just a
to
single
reduce radiation.
The routine old KUB.
Looking back at that episode, I do think that we might have been a bit remiss in not specifically addressing in more detail one of the most frequently frustrating populations for potty training, and that's kids with cognitive impairment or significant autism. 11% of autistic kids have urinary incontinence, 6.6% fecal incontinence. Overall, I think Matt and I both endorse a more child-focused Brazelton type of potty training for most kids, not pushing them. But for this population, sometimes a more operant conditioning approach with positive negative rewards and even punishments can work best, as outlined beautifully in an article on toilet training kids with autism spectrum disorder by Dr. Jody Wenger of Boston University in the April and May 2017 Contemporary Pediatrics.
Yeah, so this more intense approach was pioneered by doctors Agrin and Fox in the 1960s, and they used applied behavioral analysis, that is, ABA therapy, which is commonly something that we'll bring into play for autistic children in this day and age. And they first tried this with 10 adult males with significant cognitive deficits who were thought to be, hopelessly and permanently incontinent, but they were really helped by this approach. So it's something that perhaps should be considered.
So this success back in the 60s led them to write a famous book called Toilet Training in Less Than a Day, first published in 1968. Which I've never liked because I think we both see the failures when they push it too much and secondary constipation. But again, when this book is adapted to kids with severe autism, as outlined by Dr. Wenger, and made a part of the IEP program at school with timers and wet alarms, it can work miracles. It's basically timed voiding on steroids. And the holy grail of success is if these kids end up self-initiating using the potty. I started to give this Dr. Wenger article to some of my appropriate families, and I've got a copy here for you, Matt. Toilet Training in Kids with Autism Spectrum Disorder.
Thanks, man.
You're welcome.
An article in the Lancet Child and Adolescent Health in August of 2017 highlighted a very promising, although a small study, on oral immunotherapy with a combination of peanut products and probiotics given under the tongue, which allowed peanut allergic kids to consume peanuts. This success was sustained 4 years later. So we're getting closer to curing peanut allergies.
And one of our allergist friends in the community, Dr. Greg, here is just starting to offer non-FDA approved oral immunotherapy for peanut allergies. Now, it seems to work better taken orally than using a patch or even given sublingually. Each week, the allergist in his office gives some peanut product orally, and then the rest of the week, once a day, they keep taking it, and then they come back a week later to get an escalating dose. So doing this program, especially in the beginning, you have to go to the allergist every week, so it's a bit labor-intensive. Cure means that if you continue to take something like 8 peanuts a day for the rest of your life, you can stave off having life-threatening problems. But it's not as if you finish and then can go out and have peanuts every once in a while and be safe. So it really is a lifelong process to stave off peanut reactions. All right, so we also talked about Broadway during those allergy episodes. Probably I did, Matt nodded. I saw a production of The Sound of Music over the summer and realized that in the original musical, as opposed to the movie we usually see, Rolf actually does not snitch on Maria and the Von Trapps. So high school Matt Gotthold was not a bad Nazi, just a bad actor.
Adult Matt hasn't changed much.
And in our continuing Billy versus Bruce debate, I listened to a weird off-color new podcast called We Didn't Start the Podcast, which absolutely skewers Billy Joel for multiple musical and personal sins in his career. but was really, really funny. And I still really, really like Billy.
All right, so I need your transparency here.
Yeah.
Who told you about that podcast, man?
Matt did.
Yes, I did.
Did you listen to it?
No. Any opportunity I can to establish the supremacy of Bruce over Billy, I absolutely take.
He texted me, and it was like 13 episodes. It one for each album, and it was. I don't see him in quite the same way, Billy. I still like him, but it's a good listen if you're a Billy Joel fan. And I did score a ticket to Bruce on Broadway, and I'm reading the biography, and I think the biography is called "I Like to Scream My Lyrics" by Bruce Springsteen.
You better back off.
So I feel kind of guilty because you probably should be going to see Billy.
It's a good thing you're on the other side of the table. Well, my brother is, so I will live vicariously through my brother.
And there's a lottery this week for Harry Potter tickets, and got a ticket. Do you want me to try to get you some tickets, Matt? Harry Potter on Broadway. It's 2 different shows, like 2 or 3 hours in the afternoon, then another 2 or 3 hours at night, which I think you would enjoy.
Yeah, about as much as when I had that bunion removed.
Or a pink
thanks,
lady.
but no
as
thanks,
much as
man.
a pink lady.
Uh-huh.
All right, and also I wanted to say the feedback is clear. Everyone loves butterbeer, except you.
I can't deny that. All right, so next was the telemedicine rant. Since we recorded that episode, there was a study done by the University of Wisconsin that covered 90 providers and over 140,000 patient encounters. And that study found that primary care telemedicine visits actually increased the number of office visits and phone calls and had minimal health benefits. I quote, "The problem is that healthcare is complicated." Well,
Didn't someone else kind of higher up in our government recently say, hey, big surprise, healthcare is complicated?
Yeah. It's suddenly this is an epiphany to people.
Right.
So they went on to say that with virtual e-visits by phone or screen, patients may overreact to minor symptoms or not give clear enough descriptions of their situation. And this leaves doctors and providers on the other end of the line to then still schedule a face-to-face office visit. So to cover the extra time doing these additional office visits on top of the e-visits, these doctors have had a reduction of 15% in new patients that they're able to see each month. Wow. No shocker, right?
Nope.
In August, the AAP issued new guidelines for pediatric telehealth within the context of pediatric medical home, emphasizing communication with a primary care provider and careful follow-up. Of note, they pointedly did not endorse the entrepreneurial direct-to-consumer healthcare services that we find detestable.
But we also decided not to torture anyone with an entire rant about urgent care. We'll just continue to take shots and flay them.
Although we reserve the right to do so in the future.
Yes. All right, on to episode 12, Earwax is lit. And it was lit. So many were repulsed by this episode and seemed to like it at the same time. Not surprisingly, since we did it, there hasn't been many new articles on earwax, but we can announce that Unilever, the maker of Q-tips, which have been puncturing children's eardrums for generations, has announced that they will never be a sponsor of the podcast Pediatricians.
The last themed episodes were on strep. One article we missed was from the British Medical Journal, and it had a meta-analysis that showed a single dose of oral steroids given for acute strep throat does provide good pain relief. Now, as we mentioned, we will do this for Epstein-Barr virus. Do you give steroids for sore throats, Rob?
It's a good question when someone's throat is killing them. And I have used steroids, short-term steroids, for severe sinusitis. And I kind of picked up that trick from the ENT docs when I have someone wasn't getting better, a lot of pain. And every time I send them to ENT, they put them on a short course of steroids, and they got instant relief. Overall, though, I'm pretty judicious about giving out steroids when there is an infection, except with croup and severe asthma. So I don't do it, but this gave me pause. And again, there may be something to this. And certainly we do it for the PFAPA when someone has one of these illnesses and bad sore throat. One dose of steroids makes a big difference. And perhaps we should be a little bit looser with using a few doses for extreme pain, especially since we're not wanting to use narcotics much for opioid-naive teens.
Yeah, I've never found narcotics to be particularly helpful with that kind of pain anyway. I think the anti-inflammatories are still superior to that. But I will say that we had it drilled into our heads as trainees in medicine to be extremely careful with steroids, and it seems like perhaps there is some room for this. I can't say that I do it with any degree of frequency. In fact, my general rule of thumb is not to.
Back in the day in Chicago, we had a kid from Indiana whose pediatrician gave him some steroids because he wasn't gaining weight well. and he ended up having leukemia. And
Yikes.
getting the steroids really made the leukemia much more difficult to treat. So I always have that in the back of my mind. So just want to throw it out there that maybe we will be thinking about using a dose or two of steroids a little bit more often.
So we also mentioned PANS, P-A-N-S, which is a pediatric acute onset neuropsychiatric syndrome, and its subset of PANDAS, which are PANS specifically associated with strep infections. As we said then, it's pretty controversial, and definitive proof of the relationship between the infection and PANS is still lacking for many experts. Still, the hypothesis of molecular mimicry, that antibodies to strep can interact with part of the brain like in Sondheim's chorea for rheumatic fever, does make sense. And a recent study in JAMA, that's the Journal of the American Medical Association, Psychiatry in May, looked at Danish populations, and it did seem to support that theory.
And most importantly, the Journal of Child and Adolescent Psychopharmacology in July published a comprehensive PANS and PANDA guidelines on diagnosis and clinical management, including immune therapy. The guidelines were by an expert panel led by Dr. Susan Sweeto, Chief of Pediatrics and Developmental Neuroscience at the NIH and at NIM, the NIMH. And guess where Dr. Sweeto trained, Matt? All right, you guessed it. Children's Memorial Hospital of Northwestern University, 2300 Children's Plaza at the corner of Lincoln Avenue and Fullerton Park. In Lincoln Park, which is currently a huge gaping hole or pit, if you will. So rest in peace, Children's Memorial.
Okay, some highlights from the PANS and PANDA guidelines, just to review again. If you have a child with a lightning-like, and I mean all of a sudden, onset of OCD or eating restrictions, and I found actually even urinary frequency, often with comorbid anxiety or irritability or aggression or sleep issues, then do a strep culture right away and get an ASO and an anti-DNase titer, acutely and several weeks later. Also, should really strongly consider doing a nasopharyngeal swab for mycoplasma and influenza and getting a 25-hydroxy vitamin D level. Do a careful history and physical and look for other infectious disease entities like sinusitis. Consider immediate initial course of antibiotics right away, even if the initial workup is negative. So this is really a case-by-case type of situation, but at least having some general ideas along this realm is helpful in terms of working through this, which is really very crippling for families when suddenly their child is acting much differently than they had.
Right, and if it fits a PANDA diagnosis and you confirm group-based strep infection, consider antibiotic prophylaxis for several years as we do with rheumatic fever. They also made a point of giving extra vitamin D to keep that level above 30. It also went on, I didn't know about this, about treatment with IVIG or oral steroids when severe. And the other key, I think, for most of us in the community when we have a case of PANS or PANDA is get infectious disease or psychiatry involved as soon as possible. Get more people involved since this is an uncommon condition. One thing that they said specifically is that tonsillectomy, which we talked about, can help with a lot of conditions like PFAPA and such, but for this, tonsillectomy does not help at all. Interestingly, in Illinois, the bill was just passed requiring insurance companies to pay for PANDA treatments like IVIG. So I guess it's become controversial in some places that insurers won't pay. Again, this is a pretty rare condition. I've never seen a classic case. I know Matt has. But pediatric caregivers and savvy parents should be vigilant and be aware of these suggested guidelines.
And lastly, to wrap up, since it seems that we have an ongoing Disney thread here, the biggest feedback we got on our Disney episodes is that people really like Mulan.
Mulan.
Who's your favorite Disney princess again, Rob? I mean, mine has always been Ariel. I like the voice.
Oh, that's mine too.
Yeah, but I gotta say, Ariel for the voice, Mulan for the spunk.
I'm not going to go with Mulan.
Yeah. Oh, come on.
I'll give Cinderella some spunk, but...
No, Mulan is way spunky. All right, so we are feverishly working on Season 2 and the Podcast Pediatricians, and we actually have our first outside gig. We are going to be giving grand rounds.
Taking it on the road.
Taking it on the road. Grand rounds in Delaware at the Christiana Care Health Center in December, where they were kind enough to invite us. And
8 a.m.
8 a.m.
And also, we are both moderating the 48th Annual ROI Warren Seminar at the DuPont Hospital for Children on Wednesday, November 8th. There's still tickets available online.
before the scalpers get them.
Right. We have a great lineup of speakers. The kickoff is going to be on bipolar spectrum disorder in children, which I don't think people talk about very much and can be missed. There's one specific one at the end. We're having the head of microbiology talk about ordering panels for infectious disease, like respiratory panels and GI panels. And basically, it's striking how you can get a panel that covers like 15 things PCR for the same price as ordering one or two things. It's way more expensive to do them singly than do them as a group.
It's like shopping at, Costco versus the local
also
boutique.
for tusses. So it's really important that you know what's out there. Things have changed. She also mentions that these days, when you get a blood culture or even CSF in the hospital, gram stains really don't mean any much anymore, because within a couple hours, they'll be able to tell you what bugs are being seen by PCR. So the old days, gram stain, it might be staph contaminant, it might be something that Staph aureus. Now they know in a couple hours. So it really has revolutionized the way the hospital can deal with kids who they're worried about sepsis.
Yeah, one of the things that I've found frustrating has been that the hospital emergency rooms and inpatient hospitals have access to this type of study, and we who are on the front lines really don't, at least not at this point. Although I certainly foresee within the next 5 to 10 years that these will actually be kits in our offices wherein we'll be able to diagnose relatively rapidly within a couple of hours these types of various entities and not have to guess. The only way that I've been able to get these done is through the emergency room, and that incurs just unnecessary costs as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, again, please check out our website, podcastpediatricians.com. Leave suggestions for Season 2. I think we're going to give a little Season 2 teaser next. And sign up with your email so you can get our bonus Podcast Pediatrician Pearls. And again, anybody listening to us, find one other person to subscribe and download. We'd really appreciate it. So say goodnight, Matt.
Good night, Rob.
Love you, I love you, I love you. Where you go, I follow, I follow, I follow. You'll always be my true love, my true love, my true love, forever.
Podcast Pediatricians Productions. All rights reserved.